flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first thing we're going to do is take the roll call.
Dale Ames.
Here.
Kelly Carroll. Here. Harold Jorgensen.
Here.
Jason Alders.
Here.
Barry Wagner. Robert Schiller.
Yep.
And we also have Liz Stockman, our city planner.
Okay, do you have a meeting policy? This is done. You want to read them?
Do you want me to read it?
Sure, pass the sheet as you go.
Sure. Okay, this is the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting policy. Please register your attendance on the sign-in sheet at the back table. Copies of the agenda are also available on the back table. The agenda as printed or amended will be followed, so all necessary and needed actions by the Planning and Zoning Commission will be addressed. The agenda may be amended by proper motion. Comments from the floor are welcome during public hearings. Those wishing to comment must register on the floor comment sheet on the back table. When comments from the floor are made, individuals must be recognized by the chairman. Clearly state your name and address for the record, and allow no more than 3 minutes to state your comments or concerns. Please turn all cell phones off or on silent.
Okay, at this time we're going to open a public hearing. The first public hearing is on the continuing for the April 28th, 2020 meeting, the subdivision by the Lestico Estate at 21413 Nalden Boulevard to subdivide 3 existing lots into 4 parcels for the purpose of distributing land among family members and separating the farmstead from the balance of the land. And note here is that we'll continue this meeting till June 23rd, 2020. I make that motion. Would somebody like to make a second to this motion?
I'll second.
Commissioner Jorgensen made the second. Any discussion? So we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, we're gonna open the second public hearing, continued from April 28th, 2020, an ordinance amendment to consider changes to section 10-3-3 street subfacing and street construction standards for a minor subdivisions of no more than 3 new lots, which will require the dedication of a right-of-way but delay street construction until a later date as triggered by future subdivision. And we'll ask our planner at this time as she present this.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last month we had discussion about this proposed amendment which would defer street paving requirements for certain minor subdivisions that may be approved by the City Council. And where we left off, continuing this hearing because the Commission wanted more information regarding how this would be handled monetarily and whether the assessment process could be utilized in equitably paying for the construction cost. Since that meeting, I've met with the city attorney, and he did make some changes to the proposed ordinance, one of which you'll see on page 2 under item 4D, D as in dog. Deed restriction required, so all lots within a subdivision for which deferred street paving is approved, all the lots would have a deed restriction that says whoever splits the 4th lot or the very next lot to split would be required to pave that street all the way out to the main road. And unfortunately, under state statutes, there is no way to equitably
Go back.
control this, right? So the city council has no desire to play the bank and to pursue that 429 process, which is the assessment process. The only reason that that is in there is if someone were to default on a development agreement and did not pave the street, then the city could go in, assess the owners, and have it done. But they are not in favor of playing the bank and spending time and money on that. So it would be a property owner decision, basically, and they would have to have the understanding that that's just the way it is. That would be part of the deed restriction and any legal agreements at the time. So I did discuss this with the Lysticos, and they understand the situation. I did have one of the family members ask, well, can we make it 4 lots instead of 3 lots? And I said, well, the reason that we had chosen 3 lots was because that's the difference between a minor subdivision and a major subdivision. So the 3 lots make sense from a city perspective. We would typically want all platted or larger subdivisions to have the streets built up front. So that's kind of where we're sitting. Our hands are tied a little bit on the assessment part of that. And then one thing I want you to note is on page 2 again, under 4B as in boy, regarding emergency access and construction standards 4A. The city attorney felt adamant that if we are to defer paving, that those property owners at the time should have a stake in this, and he highly recommended that we require them to put in the base and sub-base requirements for the gravel portion of it at the time of subdivision, and that the paving is the part that's deferred. And that would also assist with item 4B, which is emergency access. And we had a brief discussion at City Council work session regarding driveway access requirements and emergency access. So what I have done on page 2 is taken what was under 4B as far as shared driveways, and I created a new section on page 3 which would be applicable to all properties. And the reason I chose June 19th as the effective date, if this were approved by the City Council on June 9th, that would be the soonest date that we could get this published in the newspaper when it becomes effective. So that date could potentially change. But the way it reads is all new principal and accessory structures and additions to existing principal and accessory structures that require a foundation, slab, or footing shall be required to provide driveway access that complies with the following. Now, we don't have to include accessory structures if you don't want to. My opinion would be that principal structures certainly would be the most important to have fire access to. Accessory structures is somewhat of an option, although some people's accessory structures are probably worth more than their principal structures. But that may end up, could be a personal decision. But regarding the access, as far as fire safety design, we're talking about a minimum of 12 feet wide to accommodate the maneuvering and turnaround of emergency vehicles and fire apparatus in accordance with Section 503 of the International Fire Code. So I learned that the Minnesota State Fire Code is adopted from the International Fire Code, and a new fire code was just adopted in March of this year. So item 4B on page 4 talks about clearance. No less than 13 feet 6 inches for the passage of fire vehicles beneath trees, power lines, property entrances, any other building overhangs, appurtenances or site features between the public road and the structures. And the final item that's important is the ability to reach a fire hose from the truck, you know, from the point where it can pull in closest to the structure, whether that be the driveway or the public road, and to have that 250 feet be able to reach around all sides of the principal structure. So those three are the critical items for fire access. So again, that section is suggesting that we establish minimum driveway standards for all properties, and it wouldn't necessarily be triggered unless somebody was doing an addition to an existing home, but it would be required for new structures the way it's currently written. So we could have discussion on that if necessary. So at this time, I'll let you share your thoughts and opinions about these changes.
First of all, let's ask the clerk for verification of the publications and mailings and postings that have been completed.
Yes.
Okay. Next, is anybody out here in the public have any comments they want to make to this? Seeing none? What about the planning and zoning? Do we have any discussions or questions to ask our planner here? Do we understand what's being done here?
So again, just to summarize, this would give people subdividing land with no more than 3 lots the opportunity to defer paving of the street. Right now, street paving is required for all subdivisions unless otherwise approved by the council. And they wouldn't have to defer paving. If they chose to pave it up front, that would be fine. This is just an option, but they would have to handle the monetary part of it internally. It wouldn't be controlled by the city, except for the deed restrictions that would be recorded, prohibiting any future subdivisions beyond the 3 lots until the road is paved and then accepted to the city's bituminous road standards.
We've had some previous discussion on this, so we're pretty familiar with this, what's happening here. Is there any other comments or questions you'd like to ask the planner at this time? If not, I'm going to ask the public out here if they have any comments they'd like to make to this. Seeing none, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Yes, Mayor.
Chair, that item number 4, you know, we're going to apply that to any existing structures that have additions. Do we know how that will affect? We've got a lot of property way back off the road. Do we know what that'll do to those existing properties?
Well, it would be a matter of, I think, more so the clearance factor, if there's trees and everything going down the driveway. But then I think, I don't know, I guess it's hard to know, you know, the turnaround capabilities on these properties without really investigating. But, you know, it can be a cul-de-sac, a hammerhead, and different layouts, as you've heard. It is hard to know what the impacts will be, and
But I'm thinking some of those houses, you know, that we went through a year or 2 ago up off Basalt there, and it's 213. And we made sure, because the new home was going in, that they had access to turnaround equipment because they were way off the road. I'm just thinking some of these structures that didn't have that requirement back when they were built, and they want to put on the addition, put up a building. you know, they may be taking down a lot of trees and grabbing a lot of area to get a turnaround, so. I just didn't know if we had any idea what
The percentage.
unintended consequences we might have here. I mean, it's certainly not a bad idea to be able to get trucks in there, but we need to not surprise people when they come in for a permit to say, by the way,
It's gonna cost you
as
X
of,
amount more.
as of June 2020, it's gonna cost you a lot more if you're gonna put a building in addition on, because you gotta be able to get a truck in and turn around.
Right. Well, it's a challenge because obviously safety is an issue.
And I've seen it, I mean, I've seen neighbors that couldn't get the truck down and turn around, so they put the pool in the end of the road and had a bunch of hoses. It takes a lot longer. Fortunately, it was a shed fire, not a house fire. So. I just want to make sure that within our system, people know that ahead of time.
But they're not going to, right?
Well, we talked about this at our last council meeting, how we can make sure that people, when they come in for an IUP or a permit of some sort, what can we tell them to warn them of cost ahead of time? So if somebody's coming in for a permit, if they're putting up a shed or addition, we just have to have it on our checklist that, you know, as of June, anything that's coming after this approval date, you'll need to be aware that there will be a cost, there could be an additional cost. So if we're going to do it, we just got to make sure we have, put some checklist in our system, and add it to a checklist to make sure people know.
Why would we make it retroactive? Why wouldn't we just do it with new construction going forward? You could effectively take somebody that wanted to put a small pole barn up and take it right off the table, because it's gonna cost him way more to add culverts and take down 3-4 feet of trees on each side and grind stumps, and because a 12-foot wide driveway that's a big driveway. So you're gonna get into culverts and all that stuff as you're coming in and out of your place, and
And the turnaround at the end, I mean, that can be significant.
especially if you say it has to meet code with a minimum of 6 inches of class 5 everywhere. I mean, there's not very many driveways that'll meet that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If we're doing this, think of the consequences, because
Yeah. If you're building a new house, it's part of the code, it's part of, I mean, you're putting in a driveway, so you know what the requirements are, you're gonna build it to that. But somebody coming in, that wants to do
that spent years hiding themselves back in the woods.
exactly, now you're gonna tell them they gotta open it up. So, I mean, I agree that I think in principle, it's good to have in there. I just question, why would we do it retroactively? And because we
Well, it
don't,
wouldn't be retroactive, it would just be for, like you say, but if it's a small pole building or a small addition,
and we don't have any data to know, does this affect 2 residents, or does this affect potentially half of our residents, right? So we're putting something in there that we don't have a lot of data on.
that's why I asked. You know, have we looked at, even if we went back X number of years and said, in these 5 instances it would have mattered, or these 20 instances, or this one, at least we have something to say, historically it would have affected these. Now the other obvious thing is, we choose to live out in the country, and if you choose to live way off the road and it's hard to get back there, you also can't complain when the fire department couldn't.
It's a
put out the
risk.
fire effectively.
It's a risk, right?
Yeah. But we're adults.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Yes, and it doesn't really make any sense to go part way. In other words, even if you required the driveway to be cleared to the proper height and, you know, into the proper width, it doesn't do you any good if they can't turn around down there. I agree. I mean, it would be a burden for some people. Certainly Yeah, I mean, you don't have to do it, it's, you know, maybe you do it in cases where your addition is X number of square feet and larger. Maybe if you're adding another unit, like we do allow for like a mother-in-law attached unit, that would be not a bad idea. If you're adding people like that.
And certainly, if, you know, if you're looking at an IUP or something where there's going to be other activity back there, it's not just you. You know, the safety is, it's one thing, and I understand a class 5, and I also know that the firefighters are not hesitant to back up in your yard. You know, we don't want them getting stuck. But a yard means nothing when there's a fire, so. But they have to have enough, whether it's class 5 or clearance, to get around. They just can't get boxed in the trees with it.
What is the requirement for what's turnaround mean? How big a space is a turnaround on a fire truck?
We've had that come up because it's come up on some new construction in the last couple of years. I don't know it off the top of my head, but the chief does have standards for that.
There's probably several homes that that's not even possible.
Yeah,
I
even,
think they get into a certain point and take hoses from there.
But this would mean,
They gotta be within 250 feet.
this thing says it's got to accommodate, it's got to be 12 feet wide, and it's got to accommodate maneuvering and turnaround of emergency vehicles and fire apparatus in accordance with 503 of the International Fire Code.
that's the minimum driveway size. If you were doing a minimum road size, that is 20 feet minimum.
Turnaround?
For width, no, for width. There's a turning radius if you're doing a cul-de-sac, and then there's a length if you're doing a hammerhead and other type designs, a Y or a hammerhead.
Yeah, I'm just envisioning this person pulling up into my yard, right? I've got a big turnaround, but some other people, this asks you to put a turnaround in if you don't have one, if you're updating your place.
Right.
Am I reading that wrong?
No,
The way it's written.
No, that's the way it's written.
Yeah.
That's why I bring up the question. That
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I guess what I would recommend, instead of opening up this whole new can of worms, is we could put this back under item 4B on page 2, which is specifically referring to the street surfacing requirements and the deferral therefore, or therefrom. So, and then we could take up the actual driveway as it applies to other properties at a later date.
I like it.
Because we do have, other applications tonight, so not necessarily unlimited time to hash it out. But these three recommendations, the width, the height clearance, and the 250-foot distance, came from the fire department. So does that sound agreeable to everybody? I mean, at a very minimum, you could probably go 10 feet wide for a driveway. But 12, if you're in a city, within the city's right of way for this subdivision, they're bringing in the base and the sub-base anyway. You've got garbage trucks and other vehicles that need to get down there.
I think it's fine for the minor subdivision that the road that they put in needs to meet those requirements.
Okay.
And if we want to strike what do we want to do with driveways going forward and have that discussion at a later date, that works for me.
So, Mr. Chair,
yes, Mayor.
so then on 4, page 3, first paragraph then, the effective June 19th, all new principal and new accessory structures. So if we want to say principal and accessory brand new construction, this could probably apply. The question we have is, we don't know the impact on existing properties that may want to add a small shed, small addition. So if you want to keep that for new construction, would be one thing, but then reconsider for, reevaluate what it means to existing properties and the additional cost of them versus the cost benefit of that. What's the benefit and what's the cost? And I don't know if the fire department's ever indicated problems out here with that. But that'd be one option. Say, at least like we talked about before, if something's new going in, you're aware.
Yeah, eyes wide open, you know what you got going into it, right?
You've spent decades calling that nice little tree cave all the way back to your house, and now you got to cut them all down.
So get rid of everything after new principle.
No, are we moving
In
that
that
over to?
paragraph.
And yeah, well, and new, if it's new principle and accessory.
Well, I think you gotta get rid of an accessory, because if somebody builds an accessory structure, they could say on an existing property also. If you just get rid of all of that, if they build a new home, that's when you'd have to have these requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would,
It's something we try and encourage when people are building new homes. We typically ask, are you looking for accessory? You may not be doing it now, but think about it now, because some people come later and say, gee, I want to put it out front now. I didn't think about it when I built the house. So it's something, at least as part of the checklist we're developing on new construction. If you're going to put up a property, make sure that the accessory building meets the 250-foot minimum for the hose.
And I think,
The maximum.
I think without debating it too much more too, I think we should say it needs to be 12 feet wide. It needs to accommodate trucks coming in and out, but I don't think we should stipulate you have to have a turnaround at the end of this thing.
or is that for,
We have typically on new construction.
For a new house going in, we require that it's wide enough to have a turnaround.
Got to be able to get the trucks, whether it's a T or there's got to be some way to back the truck up and get it out. And that's been typical on new construction. That's we typically have the chief or the inspector look at new plans.
well, Mr. Chair, I believe you're referring to mostly commercial industrial though.
No, I'm thinking up here the new house that we did up in Basalt, 213th.
It's Viking. New home on Viking.
Is that?
New home on Viking complies with that as well. That one's back off the road quite a ways.
The one on the lake?
Yeah, and they've got enough to turn a truck around. I've been back on that one.
Okay. Okay, so what do we want this verbiage to say as we move on? So Rob said effective June 19, 2020, we want to strike everything after all new principle.
I think so, because I don't think you can add accessory in there, because that would be a later time, because they would have to have a turnaround already anyhow if they built a new home, so.
That makes sense to you, Liz?
All new principal structures shall be required to provide driveway access that complies with the following.
I like it.
And if there's a site where it's not possible, or they'll have to, that would be a variance situation. Just so everybody understands that.
I have one question. Does anybody know off the top of their hand how wide a paving machine actually is? Is 12 feet gonna require them to do some really weird paving if they did a paved driveway? Because I think 10 feet is typical.
I was gonna say 10 also, but I don't know for sure.
You see how weird that would be?
Isn't a driving lane 12 feet though?
But that's a driving, that's public, not
That's
somebody's
a paving
private.
machine. I'm assuming a paving machine is doing one one past.
Well, the screen, the width varies, right? You can pull the screen in and out.
I'm just trying to remember, because I know previous home, I had only a 10-foot wide driveway. And that was as wide as they could do it because of the machine they had at the time.
Yeah, but, you know, so we have commercial pavers, I don't know, like a residential
Yeah, right?
boy, if that's a fixed screen or not, I don't know.
I don't
Like,
know.
or the screen that's on the back of a tandem truck, is that just a set width screen? Cause that's more of a,
I don't know enough about it.
that would be more of a residential type application.
Yeah. Are we asking for another troublesome there? I don't know.
Well, your recommendation could include just researching that and having the council look into that.
Okay.
There may be different
point.
widths, you know, there may be different sizes, I don't know.
There's, yeah, definitely you can vary the widths of them, but on the smaller machines, I don't know.
I don't either.
I'm disappointed you don't know that.
Like I said, I can tell you what the commercial
What
machines
does it
do.
say right on your shirt too?
Where's your electrical tape?
Quite a few of Nowden's main thoroughfares are only 22.
Yeah. Like Valley Paving, I did this, I mean, I know that machine has the capability to go from 8 to 14 feet.
But that's, yeah.
But there's just the earlier versions, we tried to be cheaper, and now you can't walk
Right,
because of it. It's
right.
pretty dangerous to walk on that 22-foot street, because if 2 trucks come, you better leave.
You better take the ditch.
Okay, Planner Stockman, what are we changing in that, number 4 then?
Oh, so the way it reads on page 3 is effective June 19th, 2020, all new principal structures shall be required to provide driveway access that complies with the following. So the 12 feet wide, clearance, the overhead clearance of 13 feet 6 inches, and the ability to reach a fire hose around to the back of a structure, so within 250 feet from the point where the truck can pull in.
In other words, the only thing we're changing is that after June 19, 2020?
Yeah, we crossed this.
Could we
this out,
please
and this
research
out,
the
crossed
width,
all that out.
just to be sure we're not
Okay.
hurting
Makes sense.
ourselves just because it's residential versus commercial?
Or making it more complicated than it needs to be? Okay, so,
Just from future, past knowledge of my own.
That doesn't say it has to be blacktop.
No, but still.
Okay, is there any other things that we see there that should be changed?
So you're gonna research this, bring it back one more time?
actually, I'd like to move this forward since we have other applications kind of waiting on it. My intention, I guess, when I said that was that you could make your recommendation
Okay.
with the addition that the council consider the possible width change between 10 and, 10 to 12.
So you'll have the width figured out before you go to them.
We would, yes, before council then, we could have some information.
Okay.
Mayor, are you all right with this, changing this?
So, I'll make a motion to approve this ordinance 2020-02 with noted adjustments to the verbiage on section 4, with Liz reviewing the width requirement on 10 to 12 feet based on a research of some paving equipment.
I'll second it.
Okay. Commissioner Alders made the motion, now Commissioner Schiller seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Did we close the public hearing? Okay. Okay, I'll call for the vote then. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we're gonna open the next public hearing. It's a variance, a request by Kevin Westerland for property located at 5434 Verde Valley Road for construction of a 28 by 34 accessory building, 59.3 feet from the center line of Verde Road, 43.4 foot variance from the front setback required. House is setback 102.7 feet. The wetland and large oak trees and the location of existing well and septic system limit the placement option. We're going to ask at this time the planner will give us the information on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the left, you see the survey and site plan submitted by the applicant. The proposed building is within sort of the front and side yard here. It is a fairly difficult site, as you mentioned. The existing house, built in the 70s, is set back 102.7 feet. So likely legally non-conforming before the current ordinance was in place. So hence the reason that I described the variance as a 43.4 foot variance, and the setback's 59.3 feet. So obviously those don't add up to our current setback of 120, because if he was placing the accessory structure at the same distance back from the house, it would be legal. So we have the septic system in the side and front yard to the west. We've got the irregular lot shape here along Verde Valley. The well is to the west of the driveway. It's a very heavily treed site, and there is a large wetland that goes across the back of the property. And as shown in this picture to the right, the boundary kind of goes up along the east side of the property. There's a big swale on the neighbor's lot, which goes south and empties into the wetland behind Mr. Westerland's house. So what I'm showing in this picture is the potential backup sites for his drain field, which would either have to be to the north of the existing drain field or in the rear yard area. So the spot that was chosen up front was done for a couple of different reasons. And one would be to save trees. He does not have to remove trees for this location. He meets the side yard setback of 20 feet. And what he attempted to do was leave space between the proposed building and the existing garage here so that he could move this RV up along next to the garage and, you know, just generally kind of clean up that front area. So, let's see here. The building size is only 28 by 34, which is 952 square feet, and which is pretty small compared to a lot of the buildings we get in now then. So I don't think he's trying to do anything outlandish. In my opinion, he meets most of these variance criteria. There's a couple spots where I asked for your opinion regarding the variance criteria. He definitely meets the intent of the comprehensive land use plan, which is low density residential land uses in the vicinity. What he's proposing is not unlike his neighbors. And I don't believe that what he's proposing is going to be a negative influence upon the neighborhood unless we have any public comments otherwise or thoughts in that regard. He will be meeting the material requirements of the city code. He plans to try to match the color of the building, which is almond, to the house, which is currently stucco. As far as the number of accessory structures, he does need to remove, a couple of other smaller accessory buildings that are currently on the site, and he is willing to do that. And regarding setbacks, all the other setbacks are met except for the front. So he has read through the conditions and is in agreement with the conditions proposed in the findings. So at this time, I will take any questions or comments. Thank you.
I will ask the clerk if first of all, the applicant is here. Do you have any questions or anything to say?
No, I think she pretty much summed it all up.
Okay, then I'll ask the clerk to verify the legal publications and mailings and postings have been completed.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anybody in the public who would like to make any comments to this? If not, we'll just go on to the commission here. If we have any discussion and questions here we'd like to ask.
Is it like fenced in there now? Is that what that picture shows?
Yes, it's fenced in right now.
Okay.
He stated that he would like to maintain that fence and just kind of attach it to the north side of his building, so that he's still got some screening from the road there.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions planning and zoning here they have to ask? Seeing none, I'll ask again the public if they have any comments from the public. Seeing none. We'll close the public hearing then. Now we'll act upon it. Really, there's not much we can do with it. Yes, Mr.
It's
Shirley.
pretty straightforward.
I think this meets pretty much all the criteria for a variance, you know, it's,
I think it's about the only spot you can put it, right?
pretty much, absolutely, and it's nothing that he did to himself, you know, so it's,
So, make a motion?
a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Schiller made the motion, Commissioner Pearl seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, we'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So, Mr. Westerland, the next meeting will be June 9th. And I will provide you that information a little later. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, we'll open the next public hearing, and this is a variance request by Mark and Gloria Sunbroom for a property located at 5837 183rd Avenue for construction of a new home, a 40 by 60 accessory building 90 feet from the center line at 183rd Avenue and 20-foot variance from the 120-foot setback requirement. The building area on this site is limited by wetland, trees, and the shape of the lot. Lot has been vacant since it was platted in 2002. At this time, I'll ask the planner if she'd give us the information she has.
Sure, this lot was platted quite some time ago, 18 years ago, as part of Glory Meadows subdivision. And it is long and skinny, north to south. The buildable area is pretty much up front here. One mistake we have made in the past with some of these plats is that the 1 acre of upland that we're required to provide to meet the buildability requirements, did not take into account the setback area from the center line of the street. So a lot of that area on this lot is eaten up by the required front setback as well as the wetland setback from the rear. And the fact that they need to stay out of this drainage and utility easement. So the front portion of this pond acts as a stormwater pond before it drains into the natural wetland, which is further back on the site. So there is house plan shown in your packet, and they intend to, they have a design in mind, and both structures are proposed at the same setback, which is nice. They are, part of their decision that led to this location was the fact that they wanted to maintain some rear yard area as far as usability. They're required to have a 15-foot buffer along this wetland back there and just leave that natural. They also needed to fit their septic system in somewhere. One of the conditions of the report or findings is that they show the backup septic drain field on the site somewhere. It could go up here in front of the pole barn potentially, or back in the rear yard. But I think it's a reasonable plan. It's a reasonable sized house. It's not excessive in size. It's a fairly average sized home for a rambler. And it meets all the setbacks except for that front setback. And here's an aerial view of the site showing you where that water is ponding and how the topography kind of goes southwest to northeast. So they'll be able to get a walkout, right? And then finally, this is the house plan they chose. You'll note that the garage is reversed in this picture, but it's the same design from Price Custom Homes. So again, I feel that it's a good case for a variance. I think it's the reason that this lot has sat vacant for so long, difficulty in selling, given the limited buildable area. There is some land, some high land in the back that they could use for recreation purposes. Good evening, this is the Merle and Jim Zumbum. They're the current lot owners. And these are the McClures, these are the buyers. So I just gave the summary of the report, and we're going to open it up, the public hearing and the discussion right now.
As the applicant, does he have anything to say?
Not at this moment, to see how this, everything else. Good to know at this point.
I'm going to ask the clerk if there's been legal publication and mailing and postings have been completed. Okay. Now, at this time, we're going to, if there's anybody in the audience that would like to make comments before this public hearing. At this time, then we'll go back to planning and zoning. Do they have any questions they'd like to ask? I know this is a lot of records since 2002. It was before we actually had ordinances.
Sounds good.
I don't see how they could gain 25 feet, so, you know,
You don't think they can get it?
not 25 feet more.
No.
I think it looks fine.
I don't think you gain. I don't think you get it without stepping on some of their variance, right?
Yeah, probably gonna screw up your septic area or anything, and having a little bit of a yard in the back is, I think that's kind of ideal.
Now, not much you can do with that lot, there's not anything you can change on that at all.
The picture is just a little bit deceiving because the low point of that lot is further north if you really look at it. Yeah. Yeah, because when they did this years ago, that was done with horses. And there's a ditch on each side as it comes down to the bottom. And I think when the dirt work originally was done, they could have went further back with that quite a bit and it wouldn't hurt nobody. You know, that's really what's wrong with it right now, because that ditch to the south, there's usually never no water in that one till you get all the way further to the west. Then there is.
Right.
But that's pretty dry in that corner.
Right.
Yeah, so I've baled the hay in there a few times, so I got a pretty good idea where what goes and how it. You go further to the west, and the water table, it seemed like it raises up. But that's quite a ways west again. You're probably almost a quarter mile west, and you'll get some that the water seems to sit more. But on that end, you never got stuck in there ever, compared to the rest of it. And I just think it was a poor job when the engineer did that myself. And nobody really took the time to measure where the lot lines were before they were developed, or houses were put on there. And if they would have did that, they would have seen it, because there isn't a lot left extra right now. And I think you could weasel a little off of that north edge there without hurting anybody. And because the dirt's fairly high right there. And basically all them ponds is drowning ponds for our grandkids. If you want to know the truth, that's what it amounts to.
This is a satellite map, right? Or a satellite image?
Yes.
Looks pretty wet to me, so, and I like ponds. I think it looks good.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Commissioner Jorgensen, were you referring to this ditch that I'm pointing to, or something further south?
Yeah, well, it's right there behind there. And
This one?
that ditch ordinarily doesn't have much water in it. The low point of the lot is about halfway across the big open spot. It's not up on that side. And I think the reason the guy did that was when he put his hay up that way, see, he didn't have two ditches to fight so much. If he put it in the middle, why, he didn't want to have to cross that.
I see.
But there's quite a few lots around in this now then that you'll find that farmers had to farm with horses because they were not properly drained over the years. And the other thing is that a lot of our ditches that drain these, after 20 years, if you don't clean them out, you can't clean them out. And we're locked into our own stupidity is what it amounts to. I'm not in favor of all this here, not being able to go in and not be able to drain something. Because we've got roads like that are in bad shape because we don't have properly drainage along the edges of them. Mm-hmm. And that's the case here, basically. But we never got stuck right near there. That was always dry right in there. Very much so compared to the rest of it. But you go further to the west way, it'll tell a little bit different story there.
Mr. Chair?
yes, Lana.
Even if we were able to push the house back, which, could be possible, I'm thinking, we'd have to go way back because we have somewhere for our septic system. Plus, then you'd still end up with a variance for the accessory building. So in my opinion, just from a design standpoint, I'm thinking it's gonna look nicer the way they've proposed it because you can actually kind of blend that mound into the slope in the back there, and it does look better. It doesn't look like a gopher mound. That's just my kind of design opinion, but.
But basically, this hasn't been a real good job for the guy that owns the lot, because the city should have never approved that lot in the first place.
That's here nor there now, though.
Yeah.
You know,
I know it,
we're
but-
at the
but
situation right now.
We pull all these stunts and we don't look at this stuff good, and who ends up with it? It's the citizens that's gotta pay for this.
Yeah.
We should be doing a better job, we're not getting it done, but see, that was in the era of John Harwood. And if you recall him, he couldn't even make a straight road.
All right, so where are we at? Let's close it and vote.
It's up to you. We need a motion or discussion, I guess.
If we could get like 95 and like 2 inches would be perfect. I'm kidding.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
Okay,
Second.
We
motion,
gotta close the hearing first, though.
Oh,
Commissioner Alders made the motion, who's,
Yeah,
yes,
you gotta close your hearing first.
oh, that's right, close the hearing, now we'll.
I'll
act
make the
upon it.
motion to approve the variance.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Alders made a motion, somebody second this
I'll
motion?
second
Commissioner Jorgensen seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Looks like a nice place.
Okay,
June 9th, I'll let you guys know the specifics. Thank you for coming. Nice to
Thank
meet
you.
you, Merle. I've not met you.
Should be fun.
Liz, you got any information for us, future meetings?
Can I come over?
Tell you what, I like ponds.
You have any information
You know why.
for us?
Bill,
for the
Oh,
future
no, there's no, well, just one thing, actually.
meeting? One thing.
And he farmed in all the horses. Ditches, actually.
Just one little
It's up the
announcement.
side, you don't drain water going uphill. But John Harwood made so many mistakes, it's unreal.
She has something to say.
Just one quick announcement as far as an upcoming topic. I was contacted by Larry Skogquist from NIH Homes this week, and he is moving forward on a subdivision there right on 47. And he's been working with the Danes Oil Company family that owns the parcel that's actually backs up to the creek there, or actually bisects the creek. So he's trying to coordinate some access back to there.
That is the old Bryan property then?
And they would like to name it Ryan's Bend subdivision.
Because,
Bonnie, right? Who was Bonnie? How is that relation to Dan?
I think that's probably a cousin or, it might have been his dad was, it could have been his grandma's place, I don't know for sure.
Oh, maybe that's his grandma, huh?
Well, see, he lives right across the road from there.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, and they had property on both sides. And then you see, that's where Mrs. Doug Steinke, that was her home place. She was born and raised. And so, and then there was, the other Brian, he lived right up the road there. What was his name? I don't know how much of that they ended up with, or just exactly, because that's been some development around in the back in there too. Ain't that where that one spot where we had that, there's a piece of road back there we ended up with because there were two different surveyors?
Just to the north of it?
I thought it was on the south, but maybe it's on the north, I don't know it. But it's a weird thing, and I don't know if we ever got that figured out.
I don't know, I'll have to look into that, Harold, when it comes, the concept plan.
It was a tapered piece back there, and I don't know how we got to that, is what I don't remember.
Okay.
We got a motion on the floor to adjourn. Commissioner Alders made the motion to adjourn.
Yep, I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner Schiller seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Mark,